Big thanks to Team Group for sponsoring today's video. Whether you're looking for storage, memory, or mobile accessories, Team Group's got you covered. With a large selection of high-performance products and completely unique design choices, you won't have trouble finding what fits your style. To learn more, check out the link in the description below. Recently, I got myself a Ryzen 7 2700X that replaced the 1600AF that I used for about 3 years, and decided it would be a good idea to make a review of this thing in 2023 in case there are people like me who are thinking of upgrading their CPU or maybe even ancient DDR3 system, yet not entirely sure what to go for. For those of you who don't know, the 2700X is an 8-core 16-thread processor that nowadays can be found for less than $100. It released in April of 2018, basically 5 years ago, so it's not a recent processor by any means, but don't let that scare you because this thing is still quite capable, even if the clock speed is over a whole gigahertz slower compared to recent releases. For the specs, we have an MSI B350 PC-mate motherboard, a Dark Freezer X128 tower cooler, 32GB of DDR4 3200MHz memory from Team Group, an MSI RTX 2070 graphics card, and a 700-watt FSP Hydro power supply. Most of the testing has been done at stock CPU frequencies, though I was able to overclock this thing to 4.25 GHz on all cores, which is something we will go through towards the end of the video. Let's kick things off with Apex Legends, which the 2700X has absolutely no issues running. To be fair, this game isn't as CPU intensive as some of the other games that we're going to look at, but hey, using high settings, the frame rate basically never drops below 100, even in most intensive situations. The game runs silky smooth at all times. You might have noticed that we're GPU bound using these settings, so you can use a more powerful graphics card in this title and get even higher frames. Once we turn down the settings and eliminate the GPU bottleneck, we get a 25 to 45% boost in performance, depending on the area.
Attention, delivering care package.
Next up, we have Forza Horizon 5, which our 2700X is also capable of running smoothly and delivering plenty of frames regardless of whether we use low or high settings. Next on the list we have Call of Duty Warzone 2, where the second-gen Ryzen 7 is slowly starting to show signs of struggle. Now, if you're a Warzone 2 player, you're most likely aware that this game doesn't run all that well, even on modern hardware. The game is straight up unfinished and needs proper optimization, because of which we could say that it isn't entirely the fault of the processor. But at the same time, it doesn't change the fact that this is the kind of performance we're getting here. Basically, you can play the game with the CPU, yet sometimes you do get plenty of frame time spikes, even when using the minimum graphics preset, even in situations when nothing is happening. I also tried playing the game using a higher preset, though you can probably guess how that went. The frame rate dropped by about 15%, which isn't something you'd want when you already have a hard time reaching 100 FPS using the lowest preset, and the frame time became even worse. So if you want to have a somewhat decent experience using this processor, it's best to stick to the lowest possible settings. Moving on, we have Dying Light 2, and using the high quality preset, the game for the most part runs in the range of 65 to 85 FPS. Lowering the graphics settings results in a 30 to 45% performance increase, though even then the RTX 2070 is mostly what's limiting us here, meaning the 2700X is capable of handling a better graphics card in this title. Cyberpunk might be the second oldest title on this list, yet it is definitely a candidate for the most CPU demanding game out of the bunch. Driving in the outskirts of the night city using the high quality preset might not make you think that way, though once you start hanging out around the main apartment region, which is probably the most detailed area of the game that has tons of NPCs, you'll understand what I mean. Areas like this one are extremely CPU demanding that result in drops down to as low as 40 FPS and messy frame times, regardless of whether we use low or high settings. So if you want to be able to play this game relatively smoothly without dropping below 60 FPS, you want to aim for at least something like a 5600X. Thankfully, there are only a few spots like that I came across in the game, so you should be fine for the most part.
Everyone wants to know what the moon tastes like? Try moon cheese. Made right here in orbit.
For our final game, we have Spider-Man Remastered, which is the second most intensive game on our list, and using the highest preset, the Ryzen 7 2700X for the most part has no issues running the game. Now, there is some movement in the frame time, yet considering how incredibly detailed and fast-paced the game is, as well as the settings we're using, I believe that this is a very good result. Lowering the settings increases the frame rate by about 20 to 45%. If previously we were jumping between 55 to 80 FPS with frequent spikes while swinging around the city, now we're getting between 70 to 100 frames with a much more consistent frame time. Keep in mind that we're mostly CPU bound in this title, since even using maximum settings, the RTX 2070 barely exceeds 80% utilization, so if anything, a CPU upgrade is what would increase the frame rate in this title. When it comes to temperatures, the 2700X isn't really a hard CPU to cool. Under full load, it doesn't exceed 61 degrees Celsius using the Dark Freezer X128 cooler, while during gaming the temps were in the range of 50 degrees most of the time. The second gen Ryzen 7 doesn't consume all that much power either. The total system power consumption barely exceeds 350 watts when playing games such as Cyberpunk and Dying Light, meaning you can safely power a system like this with a 500 watt power supply or 600 watts if you're thinking of overclocking. Speaking of overclocking, let's quickly have a look at the performance uplift that we're getting by pushing this thing from 3.7 GHz to 4.25 GHz on all cores, and as we can see, the benefit isn't all that massive. Depending on the software, we're getting 5 to 7% better performance, and the results are similar when it comes to games such as Cyberpunk and Apex. The temperature as well as the power consumption increase are quite noticeable though, so I don't really see a point overclocking this processor since it is basically maxed out from the factory. So there you have it. If you're still using a mid-range to low-end PC from 2017 or something even older than that, the 2700X would definitely be a good upgrade, especially if you're also using an AM4 motherboard. Like I said, you can find one of these for about $90 nowadays on the used market. You might even be able to find it for cheaper than that. And while it might sometimes struggle in games like Cyberpunk, it is important to keep in mind that it is one of the most intensive and poorly optimized games out there. As we saw, the second gen Ryzen 7 is also capable of maxing out the RTX 2070 in some titles. So unless your goal is to be able to play only the most recent and demanding games with high frame rates, this CPU will be more than enough for you. Anyways, that's been it. Thank you guys for watching. If you'd like to see more CPU reviews, I will leave a playlist somewhere here on the screen. Don't forget to leave a like, subscribe for more content, and I'll see y'all in the next one.